Good evening, Ridgecrest, China Lake, Eierman, and the Indian Wells Valley, and welcome to the Thursday edition of Ridgecrest Talk. I'm Robert Eierman, along with my host,
Huey.
And tonight we're here with, and I hope I can get this done right, Don Zadiba from the Water District.
Correct.
Thank you for being here and welcome.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, I really caught him on short notice this morning.
You did.
Yes.
And we're really grateful that you were able to commit for
My
this
pleasure.
evening.
My pleasure.
Next time we'll give you a little more heads up, another hour or two.
Well, it's probably good that you did.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, as far as you know, the history of the Indian Wells Valley Water District, where it came from as far as historical to where we are today as far as water in the Ridgecrest and Eierman area.
Well, it's interesting you asked that because next year we'll be celebrating our 60th anniversary. So the Water District has been around since 1955. Yes. It's grown quite a bit, obviously, as the community has grown. We have our infrastructure, I guess if you want to know, we have 10 wells in our system now, 11 storage tanks with a capacity of about 17 million gallons, miles and miles of pipe, and of course 2 treatment facilities to comply with the requirement for arsenic. We have our plant number 1 and plant number 2. Each plant services 2 wells that exceed the federal standard for arsenic. We are
just curious, were they exceeding the standards before the treatment?
Yes.
That's what I thought.
Yes.
But still had to put them in.
Still had to put them in. Yes, absolutely. Yes. And some of them are, a couple of the wells are marginal, depending on when you sample them and when they run. 10 parts per billion is the standard, and the wells will be maybe 11 or 12 parts per billion. And another sampling might be 9 parts per billion, but you have to treat it to meet the standard.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Mm-hmm.
We pump. As far as pumping, last year we pumped about 7,200 acre-feet of water, and that's down quite a bit, despite the population of the community has been fairly level the last few years, but we've actually seen our water consumption go down, our water production go down. Since 2007, through last year, 2013, our pumping has declined 19%. You may be aware, back in 2010, when Arnold Schwarzenegger was the governor, he had a program to reduce he asked water districts to reduce their pumping 20% by the year 2020. Our goal for that 2020 target is about 213 gallons per person per day, and we've actually pretty much achieved that the last 2 years. We were averaging close to 214. Doesn't mean we want to stop there.
Right.
We want to go better than the 213. And in fact, we are. Earlier this year, in response to the drought, Governor Brown asked water districts to conserve another 20%. We're not there quite, but we have seen some good decreases compared to last year. For the last 5 months, we've seen decreases compared to the previous year, ranging from 7 to about 9.5%. So our customers are responding to the drought and to the need to conserve, and that's very encouraging for us. We've been really reaching out in a number of ways. You may have seen billboards around town. We've had billboards on each of the entrances in town.
Well, I get mailers all the time, so.
Well, we did recently put out a postcard, not only to our customers, but to everybody in the 93555 and 556 zip code. Trying to reach out to everybody, not more to get the message out about conservation, the need to conserve and what the situation is, because a lot of people maybe don't get the local newspapers, or they don't watch the local television station, or I was surprised to find out somebody today didn't know about the Petroglyph Festival, and you think that's being
everybody
advertised
should know
all
that.
over. Everybody should know that, right? But so we're trying to get the message out. The big thing for us, I think, is the couple things that we need to address, and that's the watering between 8 o'clock in the morning and 8 in the evening between May 1st and October 1st.
Right.
And our board has been very supportive of staff trying to educate people, not coming out and fining. I think there's a lot of misinformation when the governor's proclamation came out earlier this year that talked about fines of up to $500 a day and fines for water districts of $10,000 a day if you didn't fine people. But that wasn't the case. What they were trying to do was provide a tool for water districts to promote conservation. So it was left up to the water districts on how they wanted to approach it. Our board, we discussed this, and we decided, we've seen encouraging results the last few years, and we thought...
Now this 8 to 8's been going on, this is like the third year?
Since 2010. Ordinance 93 was passed in 2010, yes. And actually, Ordinance 93 essentially mirrors everything that the state put out in their July 15th mandatory restrictions that they imposed. Everything that they said is in Ordinance 93. In addition, Ordinance 93 talks about the restriction from 8 in the morning till 8 in the evening to water, and also requires people to fix leaks in a timely manner. What we've been focusing on is trying to educate people about the 8 o'clock to 8 o'clock in the evening, and also the excessive runoff. To some extent, you can't really control runoff totally. The way we are in this town, as you probably know, sprinklers are put right along the sidewalk.
Correct.
So to say that you can't get water on the sidewalk.
And we have to deal with that W word here.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's probably unrealistic to expect that no water will hit the sidewalk or the street. But we can be reasonable about how much water goes onto the street. When you've got runoff from irrigation going down the street, around the corner, 2 blocks down, I mean, that's excessive. And that's a matter of your sprinklers aren't adjusted right, or you're watering too much. So again, we're trying to educate people about that, to maybe cut back on the amount they're watering, maybe water twice instead of once, but shorter periods. And it's been I've been encouraged by the response we've gotten. We also put on our website, on the homepage of our website, which is iwvwd.com. If you go to the homepage, there's a little red button that says
Repeat that again.
iwvwd.com.
Okay.
On the right side of that homepage, there's a little red button that says Report Water Waste. And we're not trying to get people to
Let me stop you right there, John, because we're just about to head off to break.
Okay.
So please join us after the break for more of Ridgecrest Talk, Thursday evening edition with Robert Eierman and Al Huey.
Welcome back to Thursday night edition of Ridgecrest Talk. Our guest tonight, again, is Mr. Don Zadila, manager of the Water District here, of Indian Wells Valley Water District. And before we went on break, you were talking about the district's website and a red button where they could win a lot of money. Did I get that wrong?
Just a little bit. The red button is we call it a water waster report, and we encourage people, if they see sprinklers on between 8 in the morning and 8 in the afternoon, or excessive runoff, to click on that button. It just takes a minute to fill in some information, the address, where you saw it, what you saw. There are choices on there: time of day violation, excessive runoff. Just check the boxes and then submit it. And we do follow up on those. And our method of follow-up, again, the focus is education, not punishment. So what we've been doing is we send a letter. We have little refrigerator magnets made up that have details of the ordinance on there, that you can water from 8 until 8 in the evening, 8 in the morning till 8 in the evening. And we'll send that, and we generally follow up, and with very few exceptions, people have been responsive, and I think it's just a matter they didn't know. If you see excessive runoff, the same thing. We'll send a letter, a magnet, and generally people are responding very positively. So again, I think it's a matter of just people not knowing, and once they have the information, they respond.
You know what convinced me to conserve? it was the bill I got from the water district.
Really?
Yeah, compared to, you know, the 80s and the 90s. You know, I got a pool, and I got a front yard, and I got a backyard, and I've got gardens, and water the heck out of them. Let me tell you, I was strongly encouraged to conserve when I opened that bill last year.
If you've been a resident in the valley for a long time, I can share with you that a year ago last Christmas we cleaned out one of the old buildings, and in there was a file drawer, and that file cabinet with little drawers in it. Each drawer had little bills, and some of the bills dated back to the 70s. So we were just pulling them out, you know, trying to clear out things, fire hazard, and we found bills for $2.50, $3. So
Yes.
to your point.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing, I can remember my gardener being very insistent that in order to keep your lawn nice and green, you needed to water during the heat of the day. And whether that's right or wrong, I don't know, but I believed him, so I always used to do that. But I can here to tell you that following the guidelines and not watering between 8 and 8, my lawn's just fine. So that's either a fallacy or it's not necessary or whatever. But it really does work to limit your watering, and you still can have green grass.
And both of you know what happens in the afternoon here. The wind blows.
Oh,
So
yes, many times.
If you have your sprinklers on and you drive around and see people with their sprinklers on at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, very little of that water is hitting where it's intended to
Right.
go.
That's true.
Much of it's going out into the street. So that's another reason.
Yeah, that's another good reason. You're right.
And another thing that the district's doing that I should make you aware of that's being proactive is our field service people have these little flags. Maybe you've seen them around town. As they're driving around, if they see a leak or they see a broken sprinkler head, they put the flag there, because many families have working parents, 2 working parents are not home during the day, so they may miss something. If the sprinklers come on and they're not home and there's, you know, it's blowing water, we'll put a flag there that says you've got a broken sprinkler head here or a leak, and I think people appreciate that too.
Well, that is really wonderful. I think I'll break some of my sprinklers
Just to see if we do that.
teasing.
We know where you live.
Yeah, that's true. You do. So, looking towards the future, and is there any hope that we will develop enough water supply that we won't be constantly told to conserve?
Well, I think in the area that we live, conservation is a way of life. I mean, from here on out, you know, the population in California has grown. We're the breadbasket of the nation, the Central Valley. So conservation, I think, is going to have to be a way of life for us. Hopefully, you know, we get out of this drought. The projections for an El Nino year a few months back, 3-4 months back, were on the order of 80-85%. That's been reduced to about 60% now. So the likelihood of us getting a good year of precipitation, particularly snowfall, is declining as we get closer and closer.
How much of the snowfall really affect our aquifer?
Well, it's more important in central northern California because that's where most of the water comes to southern California. So it's really important that they have a good snow year there. I just put an article in the paper. I don't know if you had a chance to see it, but the last major drought you may remember was in the 70s. It was basically a 2-year drought. The 3rd year, the snowpack actually was 150% of the average. So we got out of that drought. But that drought did teach some valuable lessons about storage, and the state did spend some money in creating additional reservoirs, and there was a trend towards storing water underground like Kern County does, Kern County Water Agency. This drought, 3 years ago, the snowpack was at about 50% of the average. 2 years ago, 41%. This year, they measure snowpack on April 1st because it's halfway through the water year, which runs from October to September. 29%. So it's declined over the 3 years. And the projection for this next year is not real optimistic. So we need to be prepared. You asked about ways that we can supplement our water, if you will. We know that there's a brackish water resource in the valley, brackish water being a little higher TDS, total dissolved solids, than potable water. Quantifying that and using that as a resource, treating it, is something we really need to look at. We can go out several other areas of the state, get water from Central Valley Project, State Water Project. Unfortunately, we don't have access to that water here.
Just tap a hole in the line and
in the aqueduct.
Right, yeah.
That really will ultimately turn out to probably be our saving grace in the future, is getting water out of the aqueduct.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to go to break here in just a few seconds. But when we come back, let's talk a little bit about the state mandate on groundwater and Prop 1.
Okay.
Okay?
Prop 1 is on the ballot. It's like, what did you say, 7.454 billion?
7.545 billion.
Okay. Huge.
Yes. Scaled down, originally it was over $11 billion.
Okay. We'll be right back after the break.
Back to Ridgecrest Talk Thursday night edition. Again, we have Mr. Don Zadiba, Water District Manager here for Indian Wells Valley Water District. And I'll let you finish up what you were talking about there before we went to break, if you got any other comments. But then, like I said, let's talk about this groundwater mandate from the state and Proposition 1. Robert, you're more familiar with that than I am right now. And so what can you tell us about groundwater mandate and how that's going to hurt us?
Well, there was a significant amount of opposition to that legislation in Kern County because of the agriculture, and some of the local politicians were not necessarily opposed to it, but thought that perhaps more time should be taken to put it together. I don't think that based on what I've heard, I don't think that they were completely opposed to it. I think they just felt like it was being rushed through. And
somebody had told me they wanted them to switch from sprinklers to drip systems.
For agriculture?
Yeah.
That's kind of something that is being asked of agriculture now, is to be more effective with your watering.
But
agriculture in the state...
That's a problem for them when it comes to planting, harvesting, weeding.
Yes, but agriculture uses a little over 60% of the water in this state, so the potential there to, if you can save some water, is huge. But you asked about the legislation. The key things for this legislation, there are 3 milestones. The first one is that, and this applies to medium and high priority basins. Indian Wells Valley Basin is one of 2 basins in Kern County that fall into that category. We're not high priority, we're medium priority.
Okay.
Tulare Basin is high priority. So we do have to comply with this. So what this legislation stipulates is that we have to designate a groundwater sustainability agency. And that would have to be, based on what I've heard about the legislation, I've read about the legislation, somebody like the Water District. It can be a combination, a single agency or a combination. So the Water District, Kern County Water Agency, Kern County, or the city, and the Navy could all be combined into this agency, or somehow any combination of those. But you have to designate an agency. It has to go, if you step forward and say, I want to be that agency, you have to have public hearings. That agency has to be approved by the state, and that has to be in place by January of 2017. The next milestone is that agency has to develop what's called a GSA, a groundwater sustainability, groundwater sustainability plan by 2020, January 2020. And of course that has to require that that agency bring that basin into a sustainable state by the year 2040. That's the next milestone. You have the plan by 2020. the plan has to be implemented, and you have to bring the basin into sustainability by January 2040. So you have 20 years to do that. The legislation also requires that you update and make reports every 5 years between 2020 and 2040. So there's a lot of work that has to be done. It sounds like January.
Like a lot of money too.
Yeah.
Yes, unfortunately, the state doesn't provide that money. So that how that's going to be funded is.
Didn't we pass some law where they can't mandate unless
they couldn't do that anymore? But
yeah.
Clearly, I was wrong.
Clearly, you were wrong. Yes. January 2017 sounds like a long way away, but when you consider the process and what you have to go through, it's going to go fast. So
Yep.
the Cooperative Groundwater Management Group met this afternoon. Lorelei Oviatt, the Director of Planning and Community Development for Kern County, was at the meeting. Our intent is to hold a special meeting next month. The date's to be determined. We have to make sure key people are available. Our normal meeting would be October 16th. We're proposing an October 23rd meeting because Lorelei is not available and a key consultant from the Water District is not available. What we want to do during that workshop is basically talk about the legislation, what is the requirement, not necessarily come up with the agency, but just talk about, how do we approach this. In a subsequent workshop, what we will look at doing is maybe outlining different approaches for this agency, this Groundwater Sustainability Agency. What could it look like? And then talk about that and see, how people feel like which direction we should go in. My feeling is the sooner we do that, the sooner we have that agency in place, the sooner we can start working on that plan, because again, that plan is not going to be something that can be put together very quickly. And
I can imagine.
That January by 2020 date's going to come very quickly, so I think we need to work on that as soon as we can. So
let me just switch horses on you here a little bit. On the state ballot, we have Proposition 1, and my understanding is that's a roughly $7.5 billion bond issue.
correct.
And it's going to help a lot of water districts, our water district some, I guess, or what? Tell us.
Based on what I've seen and how that money is being allocated within the bond, again, as you said, it's going to be Prop 1 on the November ballot. 2.7 million of that 7.5 million is allocated for storage, additional reservoirs, and for storage in the ground, which is really needed. Personally, I think more is needed in that respect. But when you look at how that money is parceled and where it's supposed to go, I really don't expect that Indian Wells Valley is going to see much of that money. As I said, we're considered a medium priority basin. The Central Valley right now is really, really in dire need. We talk about watching our groundwater levels drop here on the scale of 1 foot to maybe 3 feet. Over there, you're talking about tens of feet in a short period of time. So water well levels are dropping over there dramatically compared to here. So I would expect...
these basins are totally different, right?
Correct.
Okay. So although they are having water problems, or maybe having water problems, and I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but as far as this water district is concerned, we don't really care if they're suffering. We care about what our water is.
In the respect of water, yes, but if that area of the state is suffering, that's the breadbasket of California.
No, I understand. I was talking about us being able to tip one with a cool glass of water. That's all. Or are we anywhere close to that worry?
Of running out of water?
Yes.
Real quick, because we're just about to run out of time.
Okay. Real quick, a short answer to that. Private well owners are more concerned than the water district. Their wells are shallower, so they're going to see the impact before we see it. It's customers of the water district before you see it. Our wells are drilled over 1,000 feet. Most of our well levels are 400 feet, so there's 600 feet plus of water.
All right. Well, we're out of time, unfortunately. Can we have you come back again sometime in the future?
Sure, as long as you get a mug for me.
Okay.
Okay, we'll do it.
Well, thanks for joining us tonight. We'll be back again next week with another show. Join us then.